All right, so you've sent over a ton of stuff from Vite Conf 2024. Talks, announcements, inside baseball, and how companies are actually using this stuff. It's a lot.
It is, and it's not just hype. 30,000 people at ViteConf, that's wild. Shows real momentum, and not just about the tech,
Yeah.
It's the community that's forming around it.
Right, like 30,000 people geeking out over JavaScript tooling. That's a movement.
Yeah.
And the word I keep seeing everywhere is ecosystem. The Vite's not just a bundler anymore. It's like the base for a whole bunch of tools.
Yeah, and that's the shift. Most bundlers, they just package your code. Vite's becoming this platform other tools are built on. Deeper integrations, less config for you, smoother experience. Frameworks like Svelte, Nuxt, they're building on Vite now, enable some really powerful stuff.
Okay, that's cool and all, but I'm not gonna lie, my first thought with Vite was, holy crap, my dev server is fast now. And it sounds like it's only getting faster, right? ES-Build, SWC, and now this OXC thing everyone's buzzing about.
Oh, for sure. That instant feedback loop, it's amazing for us devs. But the speed, it unlocks new possibilities for what we can do in the browser. That's the exciting part.
Okay, I'm listening, because faster JavaScript is like music to my ears. But how's it actually work?
So JavaScript itself has limits, especially for performance-heavy stuff. These new tools are written in things like Rust, crazy fast, and they can handle certain tasks way more efficiently than traditional JavaScript.
So we can have our cake and eat it too. Blazing fast JavaScript without needing to learn a whole new language.
Exactly. And this OXC thing, mind-blowing. They had that demo processing 3,000 packages in like 3 seconds. That's OXC. Early days, but it could totally change how we build for the web.
Okay, now I'm imagining building these super complex web apps, and instead of waiting forever for my code to compile, it's just, boom, instant. What else could we do with that kind of speed? The possibilities are kind of mind-blowing.
Right. And that's what Evan Yu, the guy behind Vite, he's thinking about this reimagined tool chain built on these ideas.
Yeah.
Speed, efficiency, no more performance bottlenecks. Imagine that. What kind of web could we build then?
Okay, I am officially down the rabbit hole with you, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's talk about how this speed and efficiency actually help developers and users in the real world, because at the end of the day, that's what matters.
Yeah, totally. And that leads us to another big theme from ViteConf. This idea of moving away from these huge monolithic apps towards something more spread out, more modular.
Yes, the polylith. That word always throws me off a bit, I'll be honest.
It sounds scarier than it is. Think of it like this. Ever worked on an app so big, so bloated, that making a tiny change felt like swimming through mud?
Tell me about it. I once spent a whole day on a bug that was just a missing semicolon.
Exactly. That's what Vite's trying to solve with this new approach. Instead of one giant app, you break it down into smaller programs, each one running in its own best environment.
Okay, so that's where the speed and efficiency come in, right? Smaller chunks mean faster builds, faster loading, easier to manage.
Exactly. And the key to making it all work is Vite's new Environment API. Developers can define different environments for their code, browser, serverless function, even WebAssembly.
Running different parts of your app in different environments, that's incredibly powerful, but sounds potentially complicated too.
And that's where Vite shines. It makes it simple. Developers can build amazing experiences without getting bogged down in the infrastructure. Remember that Cloudflare Workers demo?
Yeah, they deployed a whole Vite app to a serverless function in, like, no time. Mind-blowing.
Right. That's Vite and its ecosystem in a nutshell. It's giving us the tools to build crazy, sophisticated apps with ease and flexibility. That's what makes all this so exciting.
Okay, so far we've got blazing fast tools, radical new architectures, and it feels like we're just getting started. But let's talk about another big thing in WebDev.reactivity. Everyone wants their website to be snappy and interactive, right?
Absolutely. And getting that buttery smooth user experience is a constant challenge.
For sure. Anyone who's dealt with JavaScript's hydration problem knows what I mean, that annoying delay while the code loads.
Oh yeah, I've been there. But there are new reactivity models emerging that are changing the game. Signals, in particular, are really exciting. They offer the super granular way to track data changes in your app.
Okay, so we're talking about web apps that are more responsive, more interactive, more enjoyable to use. But how does this tie back to Vite?
So because Vite makes things faster, these reactivity models, like signals, can run even more efficiently.
Right, makes sense. Faster code means everything's faster and smoother. What are some of the specific tools that are pushing those boundaries?
Well, Svelte 5, for one, they've gone all in on signals and the results are impressive. And then there's this tool, Cerevel, that's getting a lot of attention.
It's Arrival. I feel like I've heard of that, but remind me.
It's what makes those Svelte demos so smooth, almost instant updates. Cerevel, it lets you serialize anything, even async operations, which is usually crazy hard to do.
Wait, are you saying they found a way to make asynchronous stuff
Yeah,
synchronous? That sounds like magic.
kind of. And it's huge for UX. Imagine. Instant page loads, buttery smooth animations, apps that respond instantly to every interaction. That's the potential.
Okay, I'm sold. Before we go any further, though, I want to touch on something else that struck me about ViteConf. It wasn't just about the tech itself, it was the community around it.
Totally, that's what makes Vite special. It's built this really welcoming community, everyone passionate about building a better web.
Those open source stats were amazing.
Mm.
Tons of first-time contributors, people helping each other out. It's refreshing to see that kind of collaboration in open source.
Absolutely. This community-driven approach, that's what makes Vite so exciting. It's not just about tools, it's about building a better future for web dev together.
I love that. So are you saying we should all jump into the Vite Discord and start hacking away?
Well, you could start with their awesome docs or the tutorial kit project if you want a gentler intro. The point is, it's easy to get involved, and any contribution, no matter how small, can make a real difference.
You've convinced me. I'm ready to dive in.
That's the spirit. Speaking of diving in, we've barely scratched the surface of what Vite and its ecosystem can do.
Hit me with it.
Well, have you heard of Package PRU? Talk about a tool that embodies the community spirit of Vite.
Well, have you heard of Package PRU? Talk about a tool that embodies the community spirit of Vite.
Right. So picture this. You're using some open source library and you find a bug. Or maybe there's this cool new feature you really need. Usually you'd have to wait for the maintainer to fix it, right? Package PRU changes everything.
Okay, that sounds super useful, but I'm curious, how does it actually work?
It's all about speed and immediacy. With Package PRU, you can actually test out code changes from a pull request directly. You don't have to wait for a new release, you just grab the code and see how it works in your project right away.
That's got to be a huge time saver, especially if you're on the deadline. But isn't it also kind of risky? What if the code's not ready yet?
That's the cool part. Because you're testing things out so early, it actually encourages more feedback and testing during the development process. So instead of finding bugs after a release, you can catch them early on when the code's still being worked on.
So it's like having a direct connection with the people who build your favorite libraries. You can give them feedback, help shape the tools you use every day.
Exactly. And that's a core part of what makes the Vite ecosystem so cool. It's not just about using tool, it's about being a part of their development.
I love that. Speaking of collaboration and developer experience, we got to talk about Storybook. I use it all the time for building components, and it feels like they're always pushing the envelope.
Oh, for sure. Storybook is a perfect example of a tool that's embraced the Vite way of doing things. Speed, efficiency, and the way it integrates with Vite and Vitest. Game changer for building components.
Okay, now you're speaking my language. Component-based development is my jam. Tell me more.
So imagine building a component in Storybook completely isolated. Now, with Vitest, every single story you create, every single variation of your component, automatically becomes a test.
Hold on, are you saying I never have to write another unit test for my components again?
Well, maybe not never, but Vitest takes care of a lot of the heavy lifting and makes sure your components look right and work the way they should across different browsers, different devices, the whole 9 yards.
That's incredible. And that must make it way easier to work with other developers too, right?
Absolutely. Everyone's working from the same visual tests, so there's less chance of bugs and inconsistencies slipping through the cracks.
So faster development, better testing, smoother collaboration. I'm liking this. But what about using Storybook in a bigger project? Like, can you use it with something like Next.js?
Totally. There's a Storybook package specifically for Next.js and Vite. You get the best of both worlds, the speed of Vite, plus all the cool stuff Next.js offers.
That's what I like to hear. It seems like the Vite ecosystem is really maturing, offering solutions for pretty much everything.
It really is. And it's not just about individual tools either. We're seeing this bigger trend of moving entire development workflows into the browser.
Oh, interesting. Say more about that.
Like Next, for example. They're doing some really cool stuff with cloud-based development environments.
Cloud-based development environments.
Yeah.
It sounds intriguing, but also kind of vague. What does that actually look like in practice?
Imagine opening your browser and having your entire dev environment right there. Your code editor, your terminal, all the tools you need to build, test, deploy, you name it.
So instead of being chained to my machine, I could code from anywhere. as long as I have an internet connection.
Exactly. And since everything's running in the cloud, you don't have to worry about setting up dependencies, configuring your environment, all that stuff that slows you down.
Okay, that is seriously appealing, especially when you're working on a team. No more "it works on my machine" excuses.
Exactly. And Next Cloud takes it even further. It figures out what parts of your code need to be rebuilt when you make a change, so you're not wasting time rebuilding everything from scratch.
That's amazing. I remember that demo where they showed Nextcloud with GitHub Actions, seeing the whole build process visualized in the browser in real time. That was nuts.
And that's key, right? Transparency. Next isn't some black box. It shows you what it's doing so you have full control over your workflow.
Which is crucial when you're working on complex projects to actually understand how it all fits together. But with all this talk about tools and tech, I think it's easy to miss the forest for the trees. Where is all this leading? What kind of web are we building with all these tools?
That's the million-dollar question. And I think the answer might lie in this idea of progressiveness.
Progressiveness. That sounds very zen.
Right. But hear me out. It's actually a very practical concept. It's about building things that are easy to learn, easy to use, that can adapt to different situations, and that can grow alongside your project.
Okay, I see how that connects back to the whole Vite philosophy, the emphasis on making life easier for developers, making web dev more accessible, more inclusive, more fun.
You got it. And this idea of progressiveness, it popped up in a bunch of the Vite Conf talks. Like the Nux team talked about progressive onboarding and progressive integrations.
Ooh, now those are some buzzwords that pique my interest. Break those down for me.
Sure. So progressive onboarding basically means making it super easy for new developers to get started. No information overload, no crazy complexity right off the bat, just a smooth learning curve, introducing new things gradually.
Which is huge, especially in the JavaScript world, where it feels like there's a new framework every week.
Tell me about it. And progressive integrations follow the same idea. It's about letting devs adopt new tech at their own pace without having to rewrite their entire code base.
So no more of those dreaded big bang migrations, just a smooth, gradual path to upgrade your apps.
Exactly. And this whole smooth transitions thing, it's especially important when we're talking about breaking changes. Nobody likes breaking changes, but they're necessary sometimes.
True, true. But how do you actually make those breaking changes less painful for everyone?
Communication is key. Be upfront with your users, give them a heads up well in advance, and provide clear instructions on how to update their code.
Makes sense. And I'm guessing those automated code mods can be super helpful in those situations.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what's so great about this new generation of tools. It's not just about making things faster or more efficient. It's about making the whole experience more human, more collaborative, more enjoyable for everyone.
I like it. Progressiveness, I'm on board. But it's not just about the high-level stuff, is it? We're seeing this same philosophy applied to things like module resolution.
You're right. The roll-up talk at ViteConf, that was a big takeaway for me. They talked about progressive feature adoption and how it applies to how we handle dependencies in our projects.
Now, I gotta admit, module resolution doesn't exactly scream exciting new tech, but it's the foundation everything else is built on, right? So how do we make something as fundamental as module resolution more progressive?
It's about finding that balance between innovation and stability. You want to support all the latest JavaScript features, but you also don't want to leave people behind who are still using older versions of Node.js or browsers that don't support those features yet.
So how do you find that balance?
Being smart about how you handle different module formats and having good fallbacks when you need them. So, like, a really progressive module resolver might support CommonJS and ES modules. That way, devs can gradually transition their code bases over to the newer format without breaking stuff.
Makes sense. But how does this all play out in the real world? We've
Yeah.
talked about so much. Big picture stuff like progressiveness, nitty-gritty details like module resolution. How does it all come together to make a better web?
Great question. And that's actually something we're going to dig into even deeper in our next segment.
We've got my attention.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got all these building blocks, this new philosophy, this raw power, but how do we actually put it all together? How do we as developers take all this and make a better web?
That's the challenge, right? It's this exciting but kind of overwhelming time. Old ways of doing things are being challenged. New ideas are popping up everywhere. It's a lot to keep up with, even for experienced devs.
It's like we're at a fork in the road, multiple paths ahead, each one more interesting than the last. How do we even choose which way to go?
I like that analogy. And just like at a fork in the road, we got to think about our options, understand what we're getting into, and choose the path that gets us where we want to go.
So what are our options? We've got this move towards more distributed architectures, breaking down those big monolithic apps. We've got these new reactivity models like Signals that promise a whole new way to build UIs. And then there's WebAssembly waiting in the wings to unleash its full potential. It's almost like we've got too many choices.
It's not really about choosing one over the other, though. The real magic happens when we figure out how they can work together, how they can complement each other. That's where the real innovation is.
Okay, so we need to zoom out a little, see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But where do we even start? It's so easy to get caught up in the hype
Yeah.
and lose track of what actually matters.
You're right. It's easy to get lost in the details. The key is to stay curious, keep experimenting, and don't be afraid to learn from others. The Vite community is great for that. Everyone's sharing their experiences, their wins, their losses. It's the perfect place to ask questions, get feedback, get inspired.
That's what's so cool about open source,
Yeah.
right? It's not just the code. It's the learning process, the collaboration, the feeling that we're all in this together. That's a powerful motivator for building something better.
100%. And that spirit, that's what's driving this whole evolution of web development. We're seeing devs do things that we never thought were possible, not just with new tech, but with new ways of thinking. It's a really exciting time to be building for the web.
And that brings us back to that theme of empowerment, right? Vite and its ecosystem give developers the tools to break free from the old ways of doing things. It's about building that web we've always dreamed of. Faster, more efficient, more accessible, more enjoyable for everyone.
And that's what's so exciting. This isn't just about making things a little bit better. It's a fundamental shift in how we approach web development.
It's like this whole new world is opening up with endless possibilities and opportunities.
Yeah.
It's a little intimidating, if I'm being honest, thinking about all the challenges and opportunities ahead.
It is. And remember, we've only scratched the surface here. Vite Conf was packed with insights, and there's a ton more to explore.
So what's next? How do we take all this information and turn it into something real, something that can actually change things?
That's up to you. We've given you the tools, the knowledge, the inspiration. Now it's your turn to go out and build something amazing.
I love it. So to everyone listening, what incredible experiences will you create with these new tools? What will you build? What will you contribute? The future of the web is in your hands. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, happy coding.